So in this section, I'll talk about the major cloud providers, which is Microsoft Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud. I want to give you some insight into their different terminologies they use for their products and how similar they are and how similar functionalities, capability they provide. So I want to give you some kind of insight into the three major cloud providers. So the first one is Amazon, AWS, Amazon Web Services. They've been around since 2006. And they have the major share of the market, which is 47% as of 2018. You can see that their terminology they use for their virtual service called EC2, auto scaling, and their relationship database is called Aurora. My last job in UK for an insurance company, they were using Amazon, AWS, and they were big on DynamoDB. So and then we were also familiar with CloudFormation, which is the automation part of the cloud, like the CI/CD, the continuous integration, continuous deployment. And so they call it CloudFormation. Within that, they have all the components that you need that make up the automation. So it's called CloudFormation. And in terms of logging, which is very important, every cloud provider gives you that. And in terms of Amazon, they're calling it CloudWatch. Now, you'll see that why some organization chooses one provider over the other. One thing I have learned, and as a tip I want to share with you, is that Amazon is considered as a retailer. So any retailer organization would be hesitant to go with Amazon because they have this kind of fear that because all the eggs are in one basket, which is on Amazon's cloud, if it goes down, then it might be that the Amazon is still up and running, but yet their application is down. So they have this kind of thing that there's conflict in there. So they don't want to go with Amazon. So some of the reasons I've heard from the companies is based on that. So Amazon, despite all that, they are thinking of becoming a bank as well. Despite all that, they still have the major share of the cloud. That's because they've been around for much longer than the other two. In terms of Microsoft Azure, one of the banks I work for, they use that, and they go about 17% of the market share, and their naming convention for their virtual service called Azure Virtual Machine, and it's also called Azure Autoscale. So basically similar names, but they put their name in front of that to make a distinction between one or the other. As I said, we were big on the Azure SQL database, but then later on they also introduced the Cosmos database because that was something that they didn't have, and Microsoft quickly jumped on the same bandwagon to make sure that they also have a non-relation database, and they're calling it Cosmos DB. Azure Resource Manager, or the ARM, is a way of writing the actual code to configure a server. So if you want a computer or a server or VM virtual machine in the cloud, you have to configure it. You have to write the code using the ARM, the Azure Resource Manager. So you say, I want the memory to be this, CPU to be this, number of instances, etc., all coded in the ARM Azure Resource Manager, and then when you execute that code, it will construct or build that server in the cloud, Azure cloud, for you. So very good way of writing the code so that you are in control, and it will configure that for you in the cloud. So no more physical purchase of servers and having to install them. It's all done through coding. So you write the code, what kind of server configuration you need, specification, and then you execute that code, and it will build that server for you in the cloud. Again, the logging monitoring is important. They're calling it Log Analytics. So this is the Microsoft Azure. So Google realized that there's a lot of money, there's a lot of capability, there's a lot of opportunities in cloud. So Google, even they had their own cloud for their own applications, came along and then said that we're going to also introduce Google Cloud Platform, GCP. So they started to compete with Microsoft as their first contender, because everybody who was on Microsoft Windows, Microsoft Workshop, they naturally went to Azure, Microsoft Azure. Google couldn't get into that. So you see recently, you see organizations moving away from Microsoft Office 360. So they're moving into Google Suite, G Suite. So now that is what's helping Google to have people going to Google Cloud as opposed to Azure. So everybody, the organization you might come across will be either using Azure because they are Microsoft Workshop, or they'll be going to Google GCP because they have gone to Google for all their documents, Google Docs, Google Sheets, all that kind of stuff. So Google kind of were around since 2008. They got the 4% of the share as of 2018, but they're calling the virtual server compute engine, again, autoscaler, and their database is called Cloud SQL. And in terms of non-relational database, they're calling it Cloud Data Store. Their way of coding the actual servers in the cloud, you need to use Cloud Resource Manager. So you can see they're very similar in terms of their names, in terms of their product names, and in terms of the logging, they're calling it Google Stackdriver. So different names, but these are the main areas or the main terminologies of their products that you need to be aware of, and that's what I'm trying to show you here in these couple of slides. But they are not the only cloud providers out there. There are many cloud organization providers out there, and I have just listed some of them. The Apple one is here. Every organization, for example, Oracle, they have their own cloud. SAP have their own cloud. So every organization out there, big organizations, have their own clouds so that their products can work on their cloud. So it makes it easier for the organizations to say, yeah, we want this in the cloud. We don't need to go to Microsoft or Google or Amazon. We'll go to your cloud because you have configured your application to be working in the cloud. We'll go to your cloud. So that's what happens to the rest of the organizations taking other cloud providers, because the application they are really using from that provider is naturally moved to their cloud as well, because it makes sense. Their application has been rewritten or migrated to the cloud and it's all optimized. So it makes organization much easier to use that version. And so this is just a quick recap of the 3 cloud providers out there. I hope it gives you a bit of insight in terms of their market share, in terms of their aggressive strategies, but they're all very similar. So having one cloud provider in one organization that you might be working to another, that's okay as long as you understand the approach, the naming of their products, and that they're all the same, that they're all public clouds out there. Thank you.